Hello, Amber here from LoveFit and She. And in week 38, believe it or not, of my Healthy Happy Pregnancy series, I am talking about when the plan doesn't go to plan. Now that we're kind of really at the end of the pregnancy, baby could come any time. I think it's really important to focus on, people will talk to you about birth plans and preferences and all the rest of it. And I think it's really a good idea to kind of not have too fixed an idea about how things are going to be. So this is a really fine line for me personally. I am, hand on heart, I am a great believer in positive thinking, in visualization, in really connecting with the baby. And I know some people will kind of poo-poo that, and that's fine, each to their own. But for me and how I work with my clients and how I've worked with myself personally through my pregnancy, it's been a big part of my pregnancy to think about the kind of birth I would like to have, and to really try and visualize how that will be. And I think the only downside, the only downside of that kind of mindset is that you don't want to become so fixated on what you deem to be the perfect birth, because things can change, plans can change, whether that's before the baby arrives or just, actually during the event itself. And I think therefore it's very, very important, and I really want to stress this to all of you, that you do have some flexibility, that you're not dead set on things. And the reason for that is that if you have your heart set on a particular way of giving birth, for example, you want to have a completely natural, drug-free birth, and you end up going in to the operating theatre and having a C-section. If that's so far against what you want, then there's a much higher chance you're going to suffer from postnatal depression. You might, find the recovery harder because you've got a mental side to deal with as well as the physical side. And you don't want to feel like you lose control at the point whenever that decision has to be made. You don't want to feel completely out of control. So I think it's really important to learn how to try and relax as much as possible and to have an element of going with the flow. So, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different idea of what they want from their birth and their pregnancy and afterwards. But, we can't control this. There's a lot we can do to try and set things up in a way we want, of course. And that's, what this entire series has been about, is how to, stay strong and healthy through your pregnancy, how to try and alleviate back pains or to, avoid having them altogether, how to get yourself mentally ready for pregnancy, all of these things, including, how to try and get the baby into a good position. But sometimes things just don't play ball, no matter how hard you try to control them. So whilst I don't want people to go around thinking, oh, well, okay, I better start planning for all eventualities, that's not the point I'm making. I still think you should, do everything you can to try and make things as favourable as possible, but just don't get horribly fixated on an ideal, because if it doesn't happen, I don't want you to feel disappointed. So I think this has rung particularly true for me in the last week, because as you all know, up until very recently, I've had a really smooth pregnancy. I've been really lucky and have had none of the symptoms that everybody else seems to get, or most people get. I didn't have sickness, not even a hint of nausea. I haven't had lots of the aches and pains people have had. I haven't been sent off for scans left, right and centre. I didn't go off any particular foods or get any cravings or funny smells of anything. I haven't had indigestion. I haven't had constipation. I'm happy to share all this because it's all fact and I think it's important for people to know. I've kind of had a really textbook lovely pregnancy. And then at my 36-week check with the midwife, they referred me for a growth scan because my bump was measuring small. And it was kind of, it had measured small on a few appointments, but only a little bit under and kind of within their parameters. And then at my 36-week check, it was measuring kind of 4 centimetres under what they'd like it to. So kind of out of their 3 centimetres each way parameter, and allegedly also had not grown since my previous appointment. So they just said, look, we're sending you off for a growth scan. And I, other than thinking, it's my first kind of little tarnish, my first little thing that hasn't gone perfectly. But you know what, I'm not worried. So many people get sent for a growth scan and I'm sure it's all going to be fine. So off I went the following week. So that was in week 37. And I went off for a growth scan. And sure enough, the baby is measuring absolutely fine. In fact, it couldn't be more average if it tried. It was bang on the 50th percentile for all the measurements. So no worries about the baby's growth at all, which is wonderful news, obviously. However, what they did pick up at the scan, and what potentially explains my compact bump, is that my amniotic fluid levels are low, and not just kind of on the lower end of normal, but well under their threshold, and at a point where they were a little bit concerned and immediately sent me off for some further scans. And I had to be hooked up to a machine for quite a long time while they monitored the baby for a while, and the baby's heart rate and my heart rate and everything. Anyway, without going into loads of detail, the bottom line was everything looked fine on that scan. They were really happy with me and the baby. But having this low fluid is potentially a cause for concern. So while they weren't so worried that they had to intervene there and then, they now do need to monitor me every single week up until the baby arrives. And at this stage, that's maybe not too long, which is great. But I've got another scan later on. And if at that scan my levels have not improved, my amniotic fluid levels, or worse still, if they've gone down, there was mention last time of induction and then constant fetal monitoring during the labour. And both of these things are things that I'm super keen to avoid. But the bottom line is, if I go in and my levels have dropped even more and they're worried, they're going to want to get this baby out sooner rather than later because of various reasons. And again, I'm not here to talk too much about low amniotic fluid. This isn't a very common thing to have the level that I've got, so it probably won't happen to you. But what I'm trying to share is the fact that I have an idea of how I'd like to give birth, and if I'm being induced, that completely changes everything, because the second that happens, I'm out of the midwife-led unit, I'm out of home birth, I'm into obstetric unit, delivery ward, being hooked up to a machine for the entire time, which is not really how I'd like to give birth. But bottom line is that if that's going to be better for me and the baby, then that's how things need to be. So the good thing is, it's given me a chance to kind of think about things, look at different options, talk to my husband about what we'll do if things don't go quite to plan. So this kind of also brings me round to kind of birth plans and things. Are they a good idea? Aren't they? I think it's a great idea to have an outline and just keep it really succinct, no more than a sheet of A4 and some bullet points, but just a few crucial things about your preferences. Keep it positive, not I don't want this, I don't want that, but we would prefer, we would like, it would be good if, etc. And just something as a guideline, and make sure that whoever your birth partner is, that they are on board and they understand everything. And realise that it is a preference, it's not a fixed plan. If you get completely hooked on that, and then things, and right at the beginning, suddenly that's all changed, it might as well be thrown away and, ripped up. So I don't want anybody to go through that feeling of horrible disappointment. So really, this is just to say that if you are planning a beautiful water birth at home and you end up in the operating theatre having a C-section, as long as your baby is healthy, that is obviously the most important outcome. It might not be the birth that you would ideally like, and there are many reasons why that might not be a favourable situation, but most favourable is that you and the baby are healthy. And I think in that case also, it comes back again to just making sure that you're not feeling any pressure from people. I think knowledge is truly power with this, because there are situations where you can get scared by a bit of news, and then they'll say, we think we need to do this, and you just sit back and say, okay, fine, we'll do that. And actually, you need to ask questions, ask, well, why do we need to do that? What are the implications if I don't? What alternatives are there? And as long as you're not jeopardising your own health or your baby's, look at the other options, because maybe you don't have to go quite down the route that they're telling you immediately. There might be, some middle ground or something you can do to help. So knowledge is power, and mostly stay calm. Try not to get too upset about things and ask questions. If you can stay calm, you're much more likely to be in a position to feel you can ask questions. Whereas if you get shocked and taken aback, it's really much harder to kind of stay focused. So yeah, if the plan doesn't go to plan, don't worry. Look after yourself, look after your baby. And I will hopefully be around for week 39 if the baby hasn't already arrived. But yeah, keep watching this space, and I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.